because governing means putting your country before politics, and it keeps the lights on for the American people. We pay far too much in taxes, every American, for the government to not be responsive when they need it the most. The only thing that changed, and that timing should not be lost on anyone watching, any members of the media, as to how all of a sudden we get to this epiphany that now is the time. Because Election Day was a week ago.
In a chamber where echoes wear suits and ties, 40 days of silence stretched across the nation. Not the silence of peace, but of paychecks paused, of veterans waiting, of families counting cans, of air towers lit only by duty, not by pay. The House lit a lantern, a clean bill, a simple bridge over troubled politics, but the Senate let it flicker, choosing theater over timeliness, performances over people. So the country held its breath while leaders traded blame like currency, calling it policy, calling it principle. Yet the truth stood bare. This was a shutdown of common sense, a power struggle dressed as purpose. Now, at last, the gears turn again. Too late for the lost hours, too late for the frayed nerves, but early enough to remind us that courage still whispers in a few clear voices, and governance, when honest, is simply service owed to those who can't afford the show.
Mr. Neguse, Mr. Langworthy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I, like all of you, are here in Washington today instead of celebrating the incredible veterans in our district and across the country. But as members of the Rules Committee, we begin the important process here in the House that will finally end this shutdown madness. I honor the veterans every day, and especially today. But the work we're doing here tonight and starting that work, and we'll finish tomorrow, will begin to end the turmoil that has made their lives and the lives of millions of Americans harder for more than 40 days. For over 40 days, the American people have endured a completely unnecessary and entirely avoidable government shutdown. Not because Congress couldn't find common ground, but because Senator Schumer and his allies turned governing into political theater. And you've heard a lot of political theater already here tonight. You've chosen performance over duty and outrage over outcomes. From day one, the House did its job. We passed a clean continuing resolution, a straightforward measure to keep the government open while the appropriations process continued. And I think Chairman Cole has really articulated that very well here tonight. It's the same kind of measure that Congress passed repeatedly in the Biden years. I voted for every one of those CRs, despite disagreeing with virtually all of the administration's policies. Because governing means putting your country before politics, and it keeps the lights on for the American people. We pay far too much in taxes, every American, for the government to not be responsive when they need it the most. And that's what responsible leadership looks like. And I'm sure if we dug into all of the tweets and the statements from all the different shutdown cliffs and crises that we've been in over the years, I mean, we would see all of my colleagues on the other side of the dais swearing up and down how it was the end of the world to shut down the government. But White House switches hands, and then they did what they probably said was the unthinkable, and they shut down the government. But this time, you know, even though we passed the bill in the House, the Senate Democrats refused to act responsibly. They saw an opportunity to score political points and to appease an angry faction within their own ranks. They decided to shut down the government, not out of principle, but to please the loudest voices on the far left. Now, let's be clear. This debate wasn't about spending. This shutdown is not about health care or any legitimate policy disagreement. It was an exercise in power, a stunt to divide and distract and delay. And while they were busy playing politics, it was the American people that paid the price. The hypocrisy has been staggering. We've all seen members of Congress, I've seen some in my own region, standing at a food bank, lamenting that nutritional assistance was lapsing and was interrupted. Then, in the very same press conference, they vowed against ending the shutdown.
Nothing to do.
How can you have it both ways?
You can.
How can you want to be seen as an honest human being where you stomp and you stamp and you have your temper tantrum and you say, my way or the highway? You acknowledge people are suffering and doing without. But then you say you won't vote to make that pain go away. How? If you want to present yourself as an intellectually honest individual, how can you try to have it both ways on this argument? The American people have suffered long enough. You've called it a Republican shutdown. Now you're furious that the shutdown is ending. It's not leadership. It's hypocrisy at its very worst. You're trying to say this is a health care bill about a policy that Chairman Cole has articulated about 19 times tonight is not involved in the funding levels of this government. There is plenty of time for a robust discussion to work together through the natural process where it belongs. Our VA employees have gone without pay. Our border agents, our Coast Guard, they've missed paychecks while still serving this country. Families depending on SNAP and WIC have been left wondering when they'd get food on the table. Air traffic controllers, by God's grace, we had no air disasters during this. A system that is already overstretched, that we are trying to modernize and fix and recruit more of. They've worked without a paycheck, and the American people have fortunately been kept safe. These are the real world costs of the political games. Real people, not anyone in public office, paid the price. Now, after weeks of pain and posturing, the Senate has finally discovered a breakthrough. But let's be honest, this is the same bipartisan agreement they could have passed 40 days ago, 30 days ago, 20 days ago. This deal could have been on the table any time they were ready to come to that table. But the only thing that changed was political timing. The only thing that changed. And that timing should not be lost on anyone. Anyone watching, any members of the media, as to how all of a sudden we get to this epiphany that now is the time. Because Election Day was a week ago. And some of their colleagues have said the quiet part out loud on TV. And they've said, we couldn't back down before our base turned out in blue states like Virginia, New Jersey, and in New York. And you're watching all of their colleagues get barbecued by that angry mob. But let's also be clear, this was never about health care. This was about another talking point and another distraction. And we can and we will have that full and honest debate about health care during the final appropriations process and throughout the budget year. But this shutdown was about one thing. It was about power. It was about Chuck Schumer and Democratic leaders trying to hold a government hostage for their own ambitions, to satisfy their angry mob that wants them to come back with a pound of flesh from President Trump. If Democrats want to let their angry fringe burn their party down, that's their choice. But we are not going to let them hurt the American people any longer in this process. We are not going to let them hold anyone hostage in the name of political chaos. And I want to thank senators on both sides of the aisle to coming to their senses and working together. And I specifically want to mention Senator Fetterman, who has said from the very beginning that you can support the health care policy efforts that many in this room are talking about tonight. But you could also do what's right and fund the government and take care of the people, which we swore an oath to do. He was the most plainly spoken, honest broker on the Senate side. And that's what courage looks like. So as we take up this measure here in the Rules Committee today and the House tomorrow night, we're doing what should have been done weeks ago. We're restoring order, we're reopening government, and we're putting the country first, because that's what the American people expect and they deserve. To the veterans who have waited for benefits, to the workers who have missed paychecks, to the families who have worried about how to make ends meet, this should have never happened to you. You deserve better from your government, and politics disguised as principle. So today we will act, and tomorrow we will finish the job. We will bring this shutdown to an end once and for all, and we will send a message loud and clear that governing is not performance, it's a responsibility. Because this was never a shutdown of the government, this was a shutdown of common sense. And I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Langworthy. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, you're recognized.
Well, thank you so very much, Matt.